Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? My name is Ari Bapal, and I serve as Representative Schneider's Deputy District Director. Welcome to our town hall. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few important details for today's event. Our goal is to address as many questions as possible, and to ensure fairness, we'll be using a raffle ticket system. Here's how it works. I will call out ticket numbers in increments of 5. If your number is called, please proceed to the designated line to ask your question, which will be right there behind that microphone. To give as many people as possible the opportunity to participate, we ask that you keep your question to 1 minute. After 1 minute, the microphone will shut off and switch to Representative Schneider for his response. Please wait until your number is called before approaching the question line. To keep the process fair, we will only be taking questions through this system. If we are not able to address your question, I will be available after the event with my contact information. Feel free to take my card, which includes my email and cell phone number, so we can follow up with you directly. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your participation. And here is Congressman Schneider.
Thanks, Ari. I don't need to be so far away. I'll probably just wander anyway. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing okay. Good news is nothing's really going on. So, and rather than just doing an intro, I'm going to do something different. We got a whole bunch of questions. So as we respond to some of those, one thing that I picked up in the news, I don't know if you saw that, so I printed out the whole thing. Evidently, the headline was "Nasty Feud Between Trump and Musk, Minute by Minute." If you want, I can read every single one. There are 10 pages of tweets. I'm not going to read every single one. What I will share is I shared the New Democrat Coalition, which are the moderate Democrats. We had a lunch on, when was it? It was Thursday, right? We had lunch on Thursday. And we were talking, speaker, we had people talking about healthcare and what we're doing and trying to do to make sure that they're working for their healthcare. I get a text, which was at the very beginning of the whole blow up, which was Elon Musk just unfollowed Stephen Miller. To which I responded, why could I possibly care about this? And they said, it's going to be news. And I guess that was true. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. But what I do want to do differently, rather than, I want to get to questions. So we've got a lot of questions that were thematic in what people wrote in. So I'm going to take 3 here. We'll use this as the intro, and then we'll open it up for questions. The first one, dealing with the theme constitutional crisis. This is from Mary Daly. This is one we pulled. Is how do we get Trump to follow the law and abide by the court rulings? See, that's why we picked it. I don't know if you saw the news, and it's not. None of this is simple. Nothing goes on a straight line. But Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back in the United States. Did you see this? Yeah. And I don't know. He's on charge. I don't know if they're quote unquote trumped up. I don't know anything about it. And we'll let the court system decide that, right? Because the fundamental thing, if we're going to protect all of us, is that we protect due process. Yeah. That's what matters. So the facts of the Abrego Garcia case, and these are established facts, is that he was in the country. He was from El Salvador. He was here without documentation. There was procedures to remove him from the country. He went to a court and he applied and successfully applied to the court that he could not be removed back to El Salvador for fear of his safety. And that was an ongoing order. The administration decided to send a whole bunch of people to El Salvador. All of them, I'm going to put this in quotes, I'm using the administration's language, I'll come back to this, hardened criminals, threats to our community, et cetera, et cetera. He was swept up in that and sent to El Salvador. And the court said, whoa, no. We are a country with a rule of law. The law said he couldn't be sent to El Salvador. You need to bring him back. And you guys are following, facilitate. And we've been through these. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer, so English is pretty much a second language. I think I understand facilitate means make it possible for him to come back, but you can dance on the angels, counting angels on the tops of pins. So, well, we'll facilitate. If he can get to the door, we'll open the door for him. And of course, no, you got to bring it back. Anyway, he came back last night, and there's charges. I don't know anything about the charges. What I heard, I actually heard it coming here as I was preparing. They're accusing him of trafficking aliens, more than 100 trips from Virginia to, I think it was Texas. That doesn't matter, but let due process, let them present their case, and we'll see where that goes. But of the couple of hundred people that were sent to El Salvador, we're finding out more and more that it wasn't just Abrego Garcia. So many of these people didn't fit the profile that the administration was trying to present. And the administration is seeking to now use the National Guard to enforce immigration and across state lines, and pushing this further and further and further. And look, I think all of us can agree that if there are people in this country who are seeking to do us harm, are dangerous, and they're not from this country, we should send them back to where they came from. Pritzker's talked about that. That makes sense, and we can all buy on that. And if the administration was saying, we've identified people who are dangerous, and we're working on extricating them and moving them back to where they're from, and we don't have the resources, we can have that discussion. But what we're seeing time and again is that the administration is identifying people based on tattoos. There's I think he's a baker, a cake decorator or something, who had a tattoo honoring his mother and his father. They deemed that to be a MS-13 tattoo. And the stories just keep going over and over. Let's get this right. And that's why we have to defend the rule of law, defend the Constitution. And what are we doing in Congress? Well, the Constitution is premised on this idea of separation of powers. The legislative branch, executive branch, judiciary branch. And I remember studying in school about Marbury versus Madison that established this idea of judicial review, but that's been the law of our land for more than 200 years. And it's what has protected us and given us the freedoms and the opportunities and everything that's made this country so great. And the administration, the executive branch, this idea of a unitary executive wants to dismantle that. So we're doing everything we can to protect those three branches, that separation, the balance checks that are in the Constitution. But we have to honor the Constitution to do it. So what does that mean? So we can't, and you've probably heard me say this, Congress cannot initiate lawsuits. It's the public, it's organization. We can support them with amicus briefs. We've been doing that, and we've been having some success, more than some successes it moves through, but it moves slowly. We've slowed it down. We've introduced legislation. Problem is the way Congress is set up, it's majority rules. In the House, it's simple majority, 218. In the Senate, you have the filibuster with their rules. I understand the House better. I understand 218 is more than 215. And there are 215, actually, we're at 212 Democrats. Life has surprises. 3 of my colleagues have died this year, which is tragedy. Dear friends, especially Jerry Connolly. We need 5 Republicans to join us on these things. We're working to do that. But we will continue to move forward. We'll continue to stand strong. I described this, my picture image is playing pickleball. I don't know if any of you play pickleball, but I feel like I'm playing pickleball with both feet down to the ground, my hands tied behind the back, and the Republicans get to serve multiple balls all at the same time. And so our job is to stay standing, to stay strong, and to make sure that we are standing up for the Constitution, and that's what we're doing. And I think Abrego Garcia will let the court decide what is his personal case, but the overarching thing is the administration followed the law here. They're going to make their excuses and do everything. So that's that. I'll do 2 more questions, then we'll open it up. Second question, reconciliation. I'm not talking about Musk and Trump. The question, this was Mary Shaw from Vernon Hills. There are Medicare cuts of $500 billion in Trump's big, beautiful bill. Who or what will that affect? And before I get to the $500 billion from Medicare, let me talk about the bill itself. Trump calling it one big beautiful bill, great deal for America. It is a raw deal. It is not what it says. It's basically, in 2017, the Republicans passed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. It's a tax cut that was unpaid for, which meant added $2 trillion to our debt. But the last thing I think, and this is where there is common ground between Democrats and Republicans, we don't want to raise taxes on working families. We don't want to make life harder. We know the election last year was about trying to bring the cost of living down, helping people make ends meet and get ahead. And there's general consensus on that. But the bulk of the benefits of this one big beautiful bill are going to the people at the top. In fact, if you saw our newsletter that went out this week, if you break income levels into quintiles, 10, 20, 40, 60%, the bottom 40% of income earners, the people who are struggling the most, are going to see their disposable income go down because of this bill. And the top income earners, if you break that top 20% into even finer detail, the top 1% are going to see benefits of $300,000. They earn more, they pay more taxes, fine, but that isn't what we should be doing. And then there's other things in this bill that are included in the package. It's not just about taxes. The Ways and Means, my committee, the Ways and Means portion of the bill, which are taxes, another thing, are expected to cost as much as $3.7 trillion over 10 years. And that's a gimmick because they're having these artificial ends. Some of it over 10 years, they start counting 2025 and finish 2034. It's really only 9 years, but maybe you won't notice that. We noticed. If you make the policies permanent, it adds $5 trillion to our deficit over 10 years and $45 trillion by 2055. And how does it pay for that? Well, some of it is paid for by taking money out of Medicaid. Medicaid is a big program, and the other piece is the Affordable Care Act. The two are interrelated. The Affordable Care Act expanded Medicaid, but the independent, nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates that this big, beautiful bill, great deal for America, will kick 14 million, actually they raised the number, 16 million people this week off of healthcare. It will take away their insurance, their access to care. What does that mean? It's not just those families that will no longer have healthcare, but the hospitals and the providers that they go to will no longer have the resources to stay open. You'll see hospitals close. Now, I promise you, the hospital here at Condell will not close, okay? But rural hospitals will close. Safety net hospitals on the brink, struggling already, are likely to close. And what happens when those safety net rural hospital closes? They're going to come to places like Condell around the country, and there'll be more pressure. So waits in emergency rooms for everybody will go up. Some will have to travel great distances. Kids, 41% of kids in the United States are covered. The births of those kids are covered by Medicaid. Now, put another way, 41% of kids in America are born into poverty. That's a conversation we should be having separately. But you take away that care, and those parents won't have care. Those kids, low birth weight kids, there's so many problems that are going to come of this. And if 41% of kids that are born into poverty, programs like SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program, these programs that provide for young families, well, guess what? They're also being cut by this bill as well. And millions of families, estimated families with 3.5 million kids, will lose their food assistance programs. So that's that bill. And yet it only passed by one vote, 215 to 214. Remember I mentioned that 3 of my colleagues have passed away. It's just life. But it still has to go to the Senate. The Senate's starting to wake up and say, oh, wait a second. This bill maybe isn't what we thought it was. Oh, there's another thing that was in this bill that was buried in it. Would prohibit courts from holding elected officials in contempt for ignoring rules of courts. Now, town halls, different town halls are different places. I saw a video of one of my colleagues, a guy named Mike Flood, Republican from Nebraska. Actually a nice guy. We disagree on almost everything, but he's a decent person at his core. And they were asking him about this. His response is, what? I didn't know that. Huh. Okay, well, they didn't know that because it was an 800-page bill that was introduced 24 hours the final version before voting for it. It's much easier to identify some really bad things and say you're going to vote no than it is to go through the whole thing and say, wait a second, I like this bill, might flood, but there's something in here that I would never vote for. Now he's trying to backtrack, and he's not the only one. So this is the challenge we're facing. And so that's that. And then the 08 plus is more to the question that was asked. Because it is deficit funded, because this bill will add to the debt, we can argue 2 million, 5 million, 45 million, a trillion rather. So, you know, the difference between $1 million, if you stack $1 million floor to ceiling, it's 30 stories high. It's 358 feet. Okay, but I like to say if you turn it on its side, that's the distance of a football field, goalpost to goalpost. Right? If you keep going and keep adding dollars, $1 billion is 67 miles, but $1 trillion is 67,000 miles, 2.5 times around the earth. We're adding $5 trillion to it. Just think about that. But because we're adding debt, it triggers automatic cuts to the budget, including $500 billion to Medicare. So this bill that they didn't fully read, that they didn't fully understand, the Republicans, they're discovering, oh, wait, it's cutting Medicare as well. And so now they're dancing. So we'll see what happens with that. We're going to obviously fight it. Not a single Democrat voted for the bill. 2 Republicans voted against the bill. 2 Republicans were sleeping. As they told you, it's easier to say you're sleeping than vote either for or against. We'll see what happens. So that was that question. And let me start there because I want to then get to this. But before I go, I do want to thank Donna Johnson, Mayor of Libertyville, for being here and for welcoming us to Libertyville, the Civic Center for having us. It's better when there's pancakes here. Sorry, pancakes. And thank you for wearing the Northwestern hat.
Before you move to the next question, if the last 3 digits of your ticket are these numbers on the board, please come line up behind here if you would still like to ask your question.
All right, so it's 755, 758, 760. What, 7? Either it was random or it was all almost in an order. I promise it was random. So who's got 755? All right, you're up.
That's right number.
Yep, that is right.
So I had sent in a question earlier. One of the big issues I see in America today is balancing the budget. And he's presented a bill that everybody thinks isn't going to do that. But I haven't heard anything how the Democrats you're here to answer that question. What are you going to do to either raise income or lower expenses to balance the budget?
Great question. Sorry, tell me your name.
Frank.
Fred, thank you. So let me do the good, the bad, the ugly. Start with the ugly and going back. You know, when I first started running for office, which was 2011, it's hard to believe it's been 14 years. Part of what motivated me at that time, my sons were a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school. I said, we got $12 trillion in debt. It's just not sustainable. We got to do better. And I had spent my whole career advising businesses, trying to solve problems, getting my head around big, complex issues and putting them together. And I stand in front of you today, and that debt's grown to 37 trillion. Now, that 37 is somewhat mixed because about a third of that, fourth of that, is debt government owes itself. So we borrow money from, for example, the Social Security Trust Fund. Money comes to Social Security. That money is used to buy treasury notes. And so it's intergovernmental debt. So debt held by the public is about $28 trillion. And a big chunk of that, maybe a third of that, is owned by foreign individuals and foreign nations. Also a big problem. So problem when I started, problem today has only gotten bigger and worse. Now, some of that was COVID. We borrowed a lot of money during COVID to keep the economy going. We can be critical, and I can talk all day long about what I would have done differently on that, but we need to pay that back. Some of that money has just been built up over time. It's estimated if we did nothing, that debt's going to grow by 20 trillion over the next 30 years. And what's on the table adds another 45 trillion, depending whose analysis you're looking at. But we know it's going to add to it substantially. And it's just not sustainable. So that's the bad and the ugly. The challenge is no one likes paying more. And no one wants to see programs they care about. I have been working on this since I came to Congress. I'm part of anticipating the question. I looked at that because I can never remember the name, only the initials. BFF, which sounds like Best Friends Forever. It stands for the Bipartisan Fiscal Forum. It's a group of Democrats and Republicans who've been getting together for a number of years, talking about what we can do. Last Congress, we introduced legislation to create a fiscal commission. It was part of when we were having the debates on funding the government going forward. We want to move this forward, that fiscal commission be four appointed by Democrats, four appointed by Republicans, 8 people who would then lead a group who would study this, come back with recommendations. And to your point, it can't be one-sided. One-sided says we just need to cut funding, cut spending. Okay. Well, we can't cut enough spending, especially if you're not going to look at programs like Medicare and Medicaid to solve the problem. And one side is going to say tax the rich. Well, you can't tax the rich to solve the problem. All things have to be on the table. And the idea of the fiscal commission promoted by the BFF was let's put this on, let's bring recommendations, and let's bring it to the floor for a vote. It'll pass or fail, but at least we'll have that discussion. Because the first thing you have to do is have a discussion. We can't be revenue neutral. We have to bring in more revenues to the government. And we have to recognize that many of the things that we are spending money on may have made sense a decade or a generation or even 100 years ago, but it may not make sense today. We have to be willing to put everything on the table with no sacred cows. That bill made it through the committee, so we had some progress last Congress, but it didn't make it to the floor. Speaker Johnson wouldn't allow it to come to the floor, the bill for the fiscal commission. And then I jumped to where we are now. So that was the bad. I've got the really ugly. Really, really ugly. We haven't met as a group right now. My Democratic colleagues are trying to get with our Republican colleagues, but because President Trump doesn't have the same interest in bringing down the debt, doesn't have the same interest in controlling spending, we're not having those conversations. So we're 6 months in, 5 months in to the 119th Congress, and right now there's no engagement. We'll keep pushing with that. If you want to, one group that we work very closely with is the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. They have good analysis, you can look at that, but we have to look at both those things. So I wish I had a better answer, like I've got the plan, here's how we do it. I've got commitment, I've got a handful of people who are with me. We need 218. So thank you for the question. 758, Natalie.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, Congressman. You're on the House Ways and Means Committee. What can your committee do, if whether it's a bill or anything else, to prevent taxpayers like myself from paying $5 million to a settlement to an insurrection, or paying for a military parade, while programs like SNAP and Meals on Wheels are potentially being wiped out? What can we do so we don't have to pay for these ridiculous waste in the government?
So I'm smiling. I knew Natalie because she was an intern, worked for our office, and I knew you were smart because you managed to couch 3 questions into one. That was great. So the parade, the January 6th settlements, and what was the third one? All the cuts. Yeah. Okay. Well done. First, we'll start with the parade. It's estimated that they're going to spend $45 million on a military parade on June 14th. That's the outflows. It's going to cause many more millions of dollars of damage to the roads that the city of DC will have to carry, that they'll bill the government for, but the city of DC is controlled by the federal government, so that's got a whole circular logic to it. and it's going to close the airport for the day. Really? Is the first reaction. Adam Kinzinger had a post today that made a lot of sense. He said, only someone who is a draft dodger would think it's appropriate to have a military parade at a time when the United States is not celebrating a victory. We had a parade at the end of World War II, as we should have. There are times and places for it. The president's birthday is not one, and this is not about the birthday of the Army. It also happens to be the birthday of the Army. It also happens to be my colleague Tenny Hoyer's birthday. It also happens to be Flag Day. There's a lot of things to celebrate on June 14th. But one of the best and most important things about our country, and I love honoring our veterans. We had an event last week, or the week before, at College of Lake County, marking Veteran Memorial Day. We've had across the street of the library, we had one of our ceremonies honoring our Vietnam era veterans. There are ways to do it, but we are a civilian controlled military. The generals don't run our military, civilians. Our government runs our military. Our government, putting Lincoln, of the people, for the people, by the people. That's a really important distinction. Coming back to that whole discussion on National Guard. The military reflects the values and the principles of who we are as a country, are there to defend us and support us. We project power to protect American interests and Americans around the world. We shouldn't be projecting power to flex muscles and compensate for something. And so I won't be in Washington. I'm actually going to the Middle East with the Abraham Accords Caucus trip I'm leading. But I'm glad I'm not in Washington, but I wish this parade wasn't happening. Second one, I'm astounded, appalled, and offended by the pardon of the January 6th insurrectionists. I was in the gallery on January 6th. I saw firsthand what was happening there. I saw the heroism of those law enforcement officers, both U.S. Capitol Police and DC Metropolitan Police, who were outmanned, overwhelmed, and abused, attacked, hit with flagpoles, hit with fire hydrants. Ironically, I was getting texts, I haven't responded back. A constituent, a neighbor, a guy named Jeff Smith, Richard Smith, his son Jeff was a Metropolitan Police officer who died by suicide a few days after the attack. It was deemed death in the service, in line of service. I know how bad that day was. And the people who confessed, people who expressed regret, all of those things, we can't try to erase history. And the $5 million settlement with Ashley Babbitt's family, I heard the gunshot. We had been told to take cover. If you Google gallery January 6th, look at the pictures, one of the first pictures that will come up is a picture of me looking at a New York Times photographer thinking, why are you taking this picture? It's going to haunt me all my life. But we're on the ground, we have our gas masks on, because there were people banging on the doors. If you put all the composite pictures of that moment together, it's the Capitol Police at the door coming into the gallery from the north, guns pointed at the door. On the south side, which is the speaker's lobby, there's two doors on the side. There were people trying to get in. This is where they broke the window. They were trying to come in to their head. Had the crowd come in at that moment to where they would have had unfettered access to the house floor and gallery, all of us who were there, there were police there with guns. It would have been a horrible situation. So it's a tragedy that anyone got hurt. It's a tragedy that actually lost her life, but she was trying to break into a gallery, putting people at risk. But it's the government trying to erase history. We can't let that happen. So I will continue to speak out on that. The broad issue of what are they using the money for is it's taxpayers' dollars. And we talked about the Ways and Means Committee. On the big, beautiful bill, we had a 18-hour markup. You've seen and I'm not making fun of him, we were all in this situation, but Blake Moore was caught sleeping when they called his name to vote on amendment. And they kept saying Blake Moore, like Forrest Gump. Not Forrest Gump, Ferris Bueller. But we were all there. I just happened to be sleeping in the back room. So Cameron, I'm too old to do these all-nighters. I'm sorry. And forget the too old. The fact of the matter is Republicans intentionally were doing these. Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, Agriculture Committee, all met in the dark of night. The Rules Committee, which took everything together, the last step before it goes to the floor for a vote, convened, started their session at 1 a.m. And they did that on purpose. And then they went till 11 o'clock that night. And the floor debate on the bill before voted started at 11 p.m. And we voted on it at 7 a.m. on the 22nd. That's just not the way it should have been. So thank you for your question. And I'll work on shorter answers, I promise. 760.
Morning, sir. I'm Jerry Daly. Two questions. One, have you seen any weakening of the Republican stance in the House on their support for the big ugly bill? And two, have you been threatened at all because of your faith?
Let me answer the second one. The answer is yes. Long before this, in a lot of different ways, and the threats rise. After the shooting at the museum in Washington, that happened at 9 o'clock the night we were going all night. So I was in my office trying to see what the story was. By the time I was getting details, I was on the floor because it was 11 o'clock. And we had to vote. First vote was to not adjourn. And I was getting news all through the night. Next morning, we finished, and I said to my team, I want to do something before I go home. And I went to the museum at noon that day. I expected it to be, one of those places where we were going to lay some flowers and take a picture, and I was going to make a statement. When I got there were 40 cameras, because I think we all understand the significance of what happened. And at there, it's a long lead up to I was not prepared to say anything, so I was speaking from the deepest emotions. And what I was left thinking about, as a Jewish American growing up in this country, I grew up with security guards. First of all, let me thank all the security guards we have here. Thank you. And the joke, I came in, so I didn't have a chance to talk to you yet, but if I had, I would have said my goal is to make sure you guys are as bored as possible. That would be a success. And we can all do that together. Thanks to all of you. But there was always security at the synagogue in my holidays, just as you took it for granted, but it was like just common sense. But over the years, as I got older, there was more security than security was there with guns. Thankfully, we don't have anyone here with long rifles, but it's escalated. And it's getting worse. You can point to what happened at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh or Poway. And you can point to what happened the last couple of events, first in Washington, and then this latest event. And it's true if you're Jewish, but it's true no matter what faith community we belong to. We go to church knowing that violence could be right around the corner or at the turn of the next page. We've got to stand up and fight this. I should have said this. I've got my orange watch band, I've got the orange ribbon. This is Gun Violence Prevention Month. We can do so much to reduce gun violence. It's something that I'm proud to be one of the leaders in Congress working on. There are a lot of issues that lead to gun violence. What we're talking about, these last couple of incidences in Boulder and in Washington are being investigated, I think appropriately so, as terrorist acts. But that's coming out of this sense of we're othering people. We have to, rather than othering people, celebrate the mosaic that defines who we are as a country, but recognize that that mosaic put together makes us as one. In fact, our art, we do a congressional art competition every year, and the theme last year was the American Mosaic. And a kid did a mosaic. It was fabulous. It was up in the Capitol. So that's what we're doing. So that's the answer. I promise shorter answers into it. To the first question, remind me what it was again. Short answer for it.
Have you seen any wavering?
Wavering. Yeah, no. Yeah, so not quite. I mean, I mentioned Mike Flood in that town hall. we're constantly seeing wavering. These are my friends. Many of them. Don Bacon is traveling with me on this trip to the Middle East next week. One of my closest friends personally. You know, he stands up and says, "I will not vote for a bill that," this was before he voted for it, "that will cut Medicaid by more than $500 billion." And then he does, because the pressure. I'll put the two questions together. You asked if I felt threats or received threats because of who I am and what I do. Yes, but they pale in comparison to what the Republicans are receiving if they vote against their president right now. And it comes in hard, and it comes fast, and it's on the phone, and it's people calling the offices. And so we need to stand together. And I've told my colleagues, I will stand. I told Don Bacon, I told Brian Fitzpatrick with respect to Ukraine, because they've both taken a principled character stand on that. Joe Wilson from South Carolina, the same, that I got their back. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with them. I will stand behind them. I'll stand in front of them on Ukraine and making sure that Russia cannot defeat Ukraine and threaten all of Europe and threaten all of democracy and the whole world. We've got to stand together. So I haven't seen wavering, unfortunately, but I've seen it going in, and so far they've all stayed. So
Thank you, sir.
so thank you. 756. Do you want to pull up the next 5 numbers and put them on? We'll now see that after the next question.
Wendy,
I went,
I have a question about medical research. I know a lot of medical research has been cut, and people who were given grants had the money taken back from all across, just not neurological, but cancer, Alzheimer's, everything. But yet, going forward, the Department of Defense is now holding meetings to assign and award grants again for the next year. So how does it make sense that a researcher who already has been given permission, whatever amount it was, they've hired the staff, they've moved forward, now all of a sudden they can't do that research, but yet the Department of Defense is going ahead asking scientists to put together all of their information and everything, and soliciting scientists to sit on the board, sitting consumer reviewers like myself to help review grants. How does that make sense in the scheme of things?
so the short answer, and I'll give a more full one, is nothing makes sense right now.
Right.
And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean that seriously, because you've got left hand, right hand doing opposite things, and you know, that's the problem with big organizations in general, and the government's the biggest organization in the world. So you always have to be on the watch for, you know, the left hand, right hand issues. The science stuff, we're eating our seed corn. Actually, we're just throwing our seed corn in the disposal. What has allowed the United States to become one of the strongest nations in the world. We're blessed with land. We're blessed with great resources on that land. We're blessed with people who have incredible ideas. And we've been smart enough to use that well. And to use that well, we have the best universities in the world. We fund those universities to do the most cutting edge research, some of it which has incredible breakthroughs. Some of it has promised to start. I mean, think about cold fusion. We've been chasing this forever, and we still don't have it. But maybe someday. And that draws more people from around the world here, and we're just literally throwing that away. So we're fighting that, and we're fighting it in the courts. Of course, we're making rules, and the schools are standing up and fighting to protect this. It gets complicated. This is where things get intertwined. A lot of that defense research grant you're talking about is medical research. So I tell the story. My first few weeks in Congress, before my very first hearing, which will be the punchline, I'll tell you in a second, I had a meeting that morning. I had never been to a hearing. I was nervous. And the meeting was some people who came to Washington to talk about a disease called neurofibromatosis, benign tumors that line up on the spinal column. And their ask, and I remember this vividly, their ask was for my support for $15 million for a DoD research program into this, because the symptoms of neurofibromatosis were similar to phantom limb symptoms of people who lose a limb, and still think it's there. And obviously in the military, that's an unfortunate consequence. So there is that overlap, and there's a lot of research in defense and healthcare that work together. A lot of the advances we make, and this has always been the case, healthcare advances happen in the battlefield because you see things that we should never see, but take lessons from those experiences. We need to keep investing in that. I will continue to push to keep investing in NIH, the crown jewel of American accomplishment. We will keep pushing its investigations into cancers, investigations into chronic diseases, diabetes, asthma. I had a meeting with someone from Google this week. We were talking about artificial intelligence and some of the advances there. And there was a conversation about how to and not to make sure we would provide the security measures around AI. But he was laying out, we looking around the room, I think in all of our lifetimes, you can remember the first time we sequenced the human genome, right? It was under President Clinton, it was big news. And because of advances in technology, we've been sequencing, the sequencing for COVID happened almost instantaneously. And the whole world came together to work to find a vaccine that has made a difference and allowed us to be sitting in this room together again, thank God. And I'm proud that the vaccines that the world wants, Moderna and Pfizer, came from the United States. All of that fits together. Well, we're saying with AI, they are now sequencing, I guess, what are called folds. I'm an industrial engineer, so I'm way out of my league here talking about this. But the variations in genetics that there are millions of these, maybe billions, but they're able to do this in a relatively short period of time, which is opening the door to come up with new medicines, new cures that once would have taken a decade or more to identify are being identified in months, not even years. That's the whole thing, but we need to make sure that we're leading that. And what's happening, last thing I'll say here, is as we cut out our investment in scientists and smart people trying to figure out what the future is going to look like, the rest of the world is seeing great opportunity to come and hire those scientists coming out of our universities. And, as an engineer, and I just finished a bachelor's degree, it was hard. 2/3 of the graduate engineering students in this country are coming to this country for their studies because we have the best schools. They're coming from outside the United States. And most of those end up trying to stay here to build their careers, to build the things that make our life better. So thanks for the question. Right, so the next round of questions are up 72, 73, 74, 53, and 79.
My question is about the Supreme Court ruling from last night. It allows DOJ to go in and access all of the Social Security records and everything. And so I'm wondering what we as individual citizens can do to protect and stop this. And also, we talk about the checks and balances of government. Can't Congress pass something that no one can access this information? And I know there's this big split, Republicans, but Republicans have constituents who are just as much against this. And if they're not holding town halls to hear this, then I think Democrats need to go on red districts and hold town halls so that they know that this is a terrible policy. It's terrible for you as congressmen, as politicians, because this information can be used against you.
It's not just me, it's all of us.
Right.
We should, the problem we face in this moment, I'm going to go back to my pickleball metaphor that they're throwing multiple balls at us all at once. Some of the balls they're throwing are light your hair on fire, crazy, stupid, dangerous actions they're taking, but you only get to light your hair on fire so many times before you have scalp problems. We can't light our hair on fire in every single thing, but every single day there's something we need to stand up and scream about. And so look, we got a lot of questions about, what can we do, how can we help? And so I want to weave that in. I was going to read a question from Christine Hotchkiss in Mundelein. Please give us practical, specific, implementable ideas to address the threats to our democracy. I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves every single day. Who read the book 1984? Yeah, most of us. We're living that in real time. And one of the first aspects, and it's been a long time since I read the book, one of the key elements of that is the total loss of privacy. There are cameras everywhere. And we're in that world where there are cameras everywhere. It's one thing for cameras and facial recognition, and we should worry about that and safeguards for that. It's something else to give the government or individuals or corporations. By government, I mean Doge. By individuals, I mean Elon Musk. And by corporations, I mean Twitter and the other things where he's benefiting off of this. So there's a theme here. Access to our most private data, our bank accounts, our health records, our social security records. All of this is stuff that I guarantee you that between now and the time you get home, you're going to get an email from your bank or your credit card company, or someone says, be careful, watch out for scams, right? We know this is dangerous. And so we are taking steps to put up those security measures. Hopefully you have two-step authentication when you're signing on, you're changing your passwords on a regular basis, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't do us any good if the government is just entitled to go in and take it. Right? And so,
And they're not vetted.
yeah, so now I just described the problem. What are we doing? So we are screaming, we're yelling, we're trying to put in, we do have bills. Question about, are we seeing the Republicans wavering? On this privacy issue, the Republicans have been as outspoken as anybody in the past until January 20th, and that stopped. We've got to re-engage them and say, this is all of us. It is not, look, I'm less worried because as a public official, my life is pretty much open book anyway. I've got people tracking everything I do, not for good reasons, but my opponents, look at that. So, and I live my life, try to do it anyway. I said, I tell this to kids, I tell this to everyone, live your life like whatever you do is going to be on the front page of the paper. It makes life easier. Don't lie because it makes it easier to remember what you said last week. Our private information needs to be kept secure. So we have bills. We're trying to get those bills to the floor, and the what can we all do as individuals. So that's me as congressman. Letters to the editors, making sure that we're keeping the attention on this. The town halls. You asked about going to other places. We have been looking at going to other places, town halls. We want to go where there's going to be an opportunity to create that pressure, right? In Illinois, just the way the districts are drawn, my Republican colleagues are in districts where they're not going to get that pressure from a Democrat going into their district. But there's other places where, purple districts where that's the case, to say, come on, respond to your constituents. Right? Make sure you're keeping our information safe. Make sure you're putting our interests first. Make sure that what you're saying to us is a reflection of what you're actually doing, which is, I think, a fair request of every person with the public trust, whether it's the mayor or the president. So, thank you. You have a follow-up real quick.
Yeah, can like the ACLU or something like that?
Oh, they are. Yeah. So,
For individuals, because I know it was the unions and stuff that's.
yeah, there are lots of organizations. ACLU is at the forefront. The Brennan Center is at the forefront. Subscribe. The last thing, so let me finish where I started. So every day we wake up and we can light our hair on fire. We can worry about every single thing. We can try to do every single thing. What I do tell people is we can't all do everything. And so the best thing for any of us to do is find that issue that is most passionate, excites the passions you have the most. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's senior issues, women's issues. You can run down the list. Find the thing that matters to you most and focus on that. Pay attention to the other things, but focus on one, maybe two things, because if you try to do everything, we'll all go crazy. Try not to watch more than an hour of news a day. If you have to watch more, fine, but make sure you have your other outlets. Watch old sitcoms from the 80s, whatever the case may be. And I guess the last thing, this relates to everything. You have to be able to rely and relate to each other, talk to your neighbors. We can't lock ourselves into our cocoons, whether it's in our homes or whatever. We have to still be part of our community. I was at, yesterday I was in Vernon Hills. One of the things we're trying to do is get funding to provide some environmental reinforcement or updating. There's two man-made lakes, Big Bear, Little Bear Lake. And we're trying to, so I was looking, we're trying to get them $3 million to deal with some erosion and other issues. But you see those parks, they're surrounded by parks and they serve the community. And Vernon Hills Days, you have it here in Libertyville. The gatherings we have outside, just across the street, we can't let anyone take those away from us, because that's what brings us together as a community. And so continue to go to those, continue to enjoy them and find that joy. So thanks for the question.
Hi. Mine is more of an ask than question. I'm asking you because I know you care. Would you go back and speak to your colleagues about being a counterbalance to the barrage of all of the things we've talked about and so many more we haven't even come to that are wrong, they're illegal, they're unconstitutional? Could you get out there in all of the media and keep attacking all of the things that are wrong and keep saying, this is what we're trying to do. You need to write letters. You need to get out there. Like you were just saying, speak to your neighbors. We need to hear that over and over and over again because too many people are confused. They're believing the lies. They think what he's doing is illegal. They don't understand the tariffs. They don't understand that that's taxation. The economy is getting worse. We need to keep hearing that. We need to keep hearing that the administration cannot be controlling private institutions like Harvard. They do research that saves us all. But that's going away. They need to understand this, but they need to hear it from you. They need to hear it from every Democrat. And if you can influence some of your friends who are Republicans to say, look, we need to make people aware of what's wrong here. He has a conflict of interest in the presidency.
100%. So easy answer with this one, yes. The key point that you said, though, is keep doing it. And that's the most important thing. So the yes is, I promise I'm not going to do it until Monday. I go back on Monday. But I promised I was doing it on Friday before I came back yesterday morning. We're doing it every day. And I mentioned I chair the New Democrat Coalition. The New Dems are, well, we lost Jerry Conley, so there's 114 of us. We are, we like to say the ones who get stuff done. We don't use the word stuff, but I'm in a public setting. We get stuff done. The new thing I'm pushing is Elon Musk says move fast and break things. We want to be the ones to move fast and fix things. But the most important thing is we have to stand up. So I'll tell you some of the things we're doing in that. It's just getting out of our comfort zone. So how many of you read a newspaper today, online or otherwise? Okay, that's just a reflection looking at it. You all look a little bit like me. Most people aren't reading newspapers. They're not getting their news anymore from newspapers or from TV or from radio. They're getting their news from a whole bunch of different places for podcasts, but not news podcasts. So I listened to three podcasts so far today. I listened to NPR, Wall Street Journal, and Politico, all standard news, right? So I'm just taking my same thing. I'm kind of set in my ways. But the majority of the country is getting their news about what's happening in Washington from the NASCAR podcast or the cooking podcast or whatever it might be. So we're actually now learning how to go talk to people in different settings. There are these influencers. Anyone here an influencer? There are these influencers and they're young and they're coming out they use words I don't really understand. And this is not my joke about engineering. It is generational. But we have to connect with people where they are. And we have to do it over and over. And so I'm still on TV. You've seen me on TV more than you ever have. I promise you, for every time I've made it to TV, I've almost been on a show to be canceled because some other news knocked me sideways, including the Trump-Musk battle yesterday. That Trump-Musk thing was just more interesting than anything I'm going to say. So we still have to keep working on getting it out there. This is really hard for me to do. I guess what people like seeing are these self videos. So you're taking a video. So you're doing one thing, you're talking, so now it's two, and you're walking, so it's three things. You guys are going to see about 1 in every 10 because some of them, I'm trying to get, it's out of the comfort, but we have to do that.
Right.
All of that is different. Let me tell you what's the same though.
All of the media.
Yeah, let me tell you what's the same. Bill of Rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment, all of them stand strong. We have to have due process. We have to have, everyone has a right to vote. We have to have, we're all in this together, e pluribus unum. What the founders were talking about, what the foundations that this country stands upon, all of that is still there. And what this administration is trying to do is undercut those. And so if we lose sight of what they're trying to do, start talking about that, we lose. So it's anywhere, everywhere, and always, over and over and over again. And it's getting out of our comfort zone. So I'll keep doing it.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for spending time with us. I commend you for having a town hall meeting. I commend all these people because they care. Here's where my frustration and everybody in this audience's frustration. We're so disgusted with this country the way it is. We know, like you said, we can't keep finding fires all over and scatter your arguments as a Democratic Party, but you can focus on something that everybody cares about. Number one is prices on everything in the tariffs. We don't see a strategy, sir. We don't see a strategy where our party, I wouldn't say our party, your party's changed quite a bit as Republicans have. And that was part of the problem why this guy's in office. You need to have your leaders, if you're one of them, please get together. Every time that idiot says something that make America great, you ask the people in here, are you better off than you were before? We have to hear that every single day. Every time he has a rally, please, sir, talk to your colleagues, please, and somebody else have a rally. We had limited tickets to come in here. Guess what? More people I know want to come.
What's our waiting list?
I'm sorry?
300? Yeah, we had 300 more people who wanted to come.
Yeah, so my point is, you can have a rally too.
Yeah.
We don't know how to get it, but my point is, you need to come up with a strategy. We all agree, focus on the one thing, let's go with the economy, and then we get rid of this crook.
Yeah. So thank you. My focus on the one thing was my instructions to all of us as individuals. I have to focus on everything. I have a team so that it's easier, but we have to look at all of it. And I agree with you 100%. We say it over and over. The election in November, and I'm here officially, I'm not talking, I'd say I run as a Democrat, I represent everybody, Democrats, Republicans, and everybody in between. The election was pretty clear about prices. Prices are more about the quality of life. It's hard. Everything's harder. Gas was expensive. Food was expensive. Housing is expensive. Everything's going up. And no one seems to be talking about how we make life better. And by the way, I'm going to keep coming back to New Dems. We put out a platform. Being chair, I get to have a little more influence than others, but we have 3 pillars on that platform. Number 1 is growing the economy and lowering prices, making it easier to get ahead. Number 2 is healthy and safe communities. That includes communities where you're comfortable and secure in your home, on your way to work, your kids on the way to school, going to the park, whatever the case may be. It is access to healthcare, it's access to quality education, et cetera, et cetera. And the 3rd pillar is strong national security, national defense, because the United States is an indispensable country in the world when we stand on our values and project this idea that democracy is good, countries working together, exchanging with each other, level playing field is good, countries that trade together tend not to fight each other, et cetera, et cetera. That's all 100% the case. The messaging issue, there's a asymmetry. And there's always an asymmetry when one party controls the White House, the House, and the Senate. The leader of the party is clearly the president, and the president has a voice. Now, this is the first time we've had a president with a social media platform as well, so it's a different world, but that's in the realm of normal. It's also in the realm of normal when the minority party has none of those. Our leaders are more diffuse, but there are a lot of wonderful leaders on the Republican side. Without passing judgment, so I'm just going to name these leaders, so don't yell at me. But the leader of the Senate is Chuck Schumer. Senators are following him. But us in the House are not following Chuck Schumer. Our leader is Hakeem Jeffries. We're following him. But there are leaders in the states. Illinois, it's Pritzker, a strong voice you're hearing quite a bit. You've got Andy Beshear in Kentucky, Westmore in Maryland. Okay, on minority side, again, if it was reversed, you would just change the name of the parties, but the party that's not in power, there's a lot of voices that will rise up. But what has to happen, and this is what you talk about, there's a bumper sticker, maybe you've seen it floating around. It's not that I bought this car before I knew who Elon Musk was. The bumper sticker is America great yet? Because mostly I'm just embarrassed. And I saw that on the, I think it was on the right, it was a pickup truck and it was on the right window. And on the left side of the window was a veteran. And it hit me and I saw it, I was thinking of this as a father, my son was in the Navy. And I can be embarrassed of things my country does. If you think of our lifetime, there's been lots of moments where the country has done things that we might wish it hadn't done. But I've my whole life, in fact, I yelled at someone in the hearing this week, I am a proud American. I love my country. I will stand up for my country. Old, so I'm not going to be one going to war for my country, but I would have if necessary. And it needs to be a country that we can be proud of. I was in Canada for a wedding a few weeks ago, and I wish I could do accents. I can't. This is it. And it's as American as can be, because Canada, you might be surprised, Canadians are really mad at us right now. Okay? But they also know that, or hope that this is a moment that we'll get through. We've had dark moments in the past, we'll get through this moment. We need to keep our eye, I have all these mantras that are holding me right now. 3 things. We have to keep our faith in what we know is the promise of this country initially created by the founders 248 years ago. We can't, 49 years ago. We can't let go of that. And we have to be resolutely defiant against all the garbage that might be thrown against us to say we're going to keep marching forward on that pursuit of a more perfect union. And we have to persevere. And that's what it has to be. So it's not going to be easy. I don't know how many days we are, but it's 5 months in. We're not 6 months into this administration, which has 48 months. I will do everything I can to be in the majority in 2027, 2026 election. That's going to be my focus. But we have to work, and I'll continue, as was said earlier. I'm also part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, a Republican Democrat group. It's really difficult right now because the Republicans aren't showing up to the meetings. I'm going to still go to the meetings and still say, hey, come, let's keep talking, because we have to keep talking. So thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I'm just trying to say that, please make sure your colleagues focus on something, like you said, like that Banner Pride, and you just said about the bumper sticker. But I think we all know, unless you guys, you really, really unite, this man will not leave that White House ever again. He will have the law change, but they'll say there's no more longer our Constitution, they'll change the Constitution.
We took an oath to the Constitution, we have to protect it.
What about the
So thank you for my help.
Thank you.
Good morning, Congressman.
About the what?
Your live stream.
Oh, that's right, we're live streaming, so there are other people watching us. Thank you, now. And
Good morning.
you should put the next numbers up too.
7:53.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for doing this in town hall. It means a lot to see you in person and talk to you. Well, my biggest problem this week is the masked people that are stopping people on the street, pulling them out of their cars, inviting them to meetings, and then arresting them without any identification. They refuse to say who they are. So right now, their targets are allegedly the criminal illegal aliens. Well, next week, it could be left-handed people.
Oh, wait.
Or smile too much, or you smile too much or not enough, or you shop at Jewel, or you own a Tesla. So to me, this is a huge problem. It's like secret police. What can we do to stop this travesty now? because that is dictatorship, as the man before me just said.
Right. You're 100% right. That's why I started with, on purpose, talking about due process of law. Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Like I said, I don't know the backgrounds of the 200 and some odd people that the administration sent to El Salvador. I do know they were sent there without full access to due process. Every single person. Constitution, I looked this up, so I know, but it mentions citizen 22 times in the Constitution. It mentions person 49 times. There's only 3 times the two are together. A person must be a citizen to run for Congress, for the House. A person must be a citizen to run for Senate or be a senator. A person must be a citizen to be president. That's the only time the 3 are together. Fifth Amendment says a person must have access to due process of law before you take their property or person away. And so we have to make sure the Constitution stands. The transparency, the fact that these people are wearing masks, the lack of clarity, the lack of charges, and the system is being severely tested. It is holding so far. Some of the students who have been arrested in these stops that you talk about, arrested the woman in Massachusetts because she wrote a op-ed that I may vehemently, big word, I can't use it, completely disagree with, but she has a right to her opinion. We need to make sure that everyone in this country has that due process. And it's not just the Fifth Amendment. We have to stand for everything in that Constitution.
Well, just today, the first thing I noticed, all the police here today, they have IDs on, they have officers on the back. We know that who they are.
Yeah.
These people are just walking up to these people and taking them, who knows where. Can't find them.
So
That's what my biggest worry is that.
look, I believe I'm contractually obligated to say that I have the best district in the United States. I think that's required of every congressman. I actually believe it's true, right? I am so fortunate to have this district that we can go around and do our town halls and be able to have respectful conversations. Not necessarily everybody agree, but we can have those respectful conversations. I am grateful that I can go around to anywhere in my district. I have wonderful relationships with our police departments, with our fire departments, first responders. We're very lucky in that respect. I had a meeting yesterday with the new mayor of Round Lake. And this is someone, he had been on the city council a generation ago. He came back because there was an issue in Round Lake, and he wanted, the council wanted to address this issue, and they are. And it's how our government works. We're blessed, like with Mayor Johnson, people who are civic servants who are out, about, you see us, you talk to us. People see me on rare occasion in the grocery store, but more often at a fast food restaurant or dinner with my family or just whatever. And we are accessible. And that's true for, I think, throughout our district, in our bigger communities like Waukegan, mid-sized like Libertyville, and even our smaller communities like Round Lake. So I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
798. Are we out of questions or out of time? Okay.
Well, I'll make it quick.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Veronica. You know, you talk about all these situations where the hair on fire. We could talk for a millennium about all the things that are wrong with this administration. My question to you, sir, is one thing the Republicans did right. I know you're gonna all go, ugh, but here's this, they did have a plan. It was called Project 2025. Okay? They got their best and brightest, maybe not, but they got whatever with Boyd. And they took that 4 years, or maybe more, to come up with this plan. And they have executed surgically. Really, and you know, we can say it's good or bad, it's all bad. But anyways, I want to know and I'm not just talking about the Democratic Party, I'm talking about independents and non-Trump Republicans. What are we doing? Do we have a plan? Do we have a 2026?
Yeah.
Do we have a 2028? Do we have a plan even for November? Do we have a plan for tomorrow? Because I watch the news way too much. But are we gonna make it till November?
Yeah.
Really, I think most people
We're gonna make it to November because we're all out here and there's people like us out here all over the country, and we're gonna make sure that happens. And you see that energy stepping up. I'll draw or point out a difference. If you remember in 2017, President Trump, for his first term, was inaugurated vote in a while, by the way. He got the majority of the electoral vote. Republicans won the House and the Senate, evidently because of Elon Musk, but we can debate that another day. We can talk about campaign finance reform as well. We need to have that. They do have a plan. They denied it. They said probably 2025 wasn't going to happen. I had to quit back then. The best way to stop Project 2025 is to win the election in 2024. I was right then, because you're seeing what's happening now. They're rolling it out. I would argue well, I guess it is surgical, especially Doge, and I'm saying this, it'll get a laugh, but it's actually serious. What they are doing is the equivalent of weight management with a chainsaw by amputation. It is not surgical, and if you may have seen the article yesterday that they're trying to hire a whole bunch of people back because they fired way too many. We need people who forecast hurricanes during hurricane season, and yes, there is a hurricane season. If you haven't had a chance to read the book Abundance by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, I recommend it. One of the premises of the books is, if you look at so-called blue states, they're not delivering the results people were hoping for. So to build, one of the places where housing is most expensive and you have some of the highest numbers of homelessness is in the San Francisco area. We could talk about San Francisco for a long time, but it costs a third as much to build a new home in Texas as it does in California. We have a housing shortage across the country. We've got to address that housing shortage and make it easier for young families to get into the first home, for people to move into that bigger home as they have their families, and for people to sell their home as they age out into move into a place where they can age in place. That's easy to say, it's hard to do. Transportation. I came to Chicago area for college in 1979. I've been here a long time. We have been talking about building high-speed rail from Chicago to Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Detroit, Indianapolis, St. Louis. Right? Just think of the star with Chicago as the center. Right? In the however many years, 40 some odd years that I've been in Chicago, we are no closer to that than we got here, but they've built an entire network of high-speed rail throughout China. We've talked about energy independence from when I was in high school. Right? We have moved and made great strides on that. The cost of solar has gone from very high to comparatively cheap right now. We need an all of the above solution because energy demands are going through the roof. But we need to have smart solutions that will protect our grid, deliver the power we need, and not fry the planet. So we have to be talking again about nuclear power, but we also have to be talking about renewable power. China last year installed more solar power onto its grid in 1 year than we have installed throughout our history. Right? Think about that. We have to, but what are some of the problems? Well, the obstacles and the hurdles that we can put in place, well-meaning most of the time, but slowing the process down. So that's, back to what I was saying, we need to move fast and fix things. We have to move fast and build things. We have to move fast and make sure that America, the United States, is at the forefront in lifting people up and making not just our country, but the world a better place to be. None of that's a plan, all of that are goals, right? We are working on the plan. I'm going to come back to the new Dems. I mentioned our three pillars. We have 9 working groups that are framing that. This is a plan, not the plan, but hopefully a little informative. What we need is the voice. I talked before of, we'll see who that voice is. What the country is looking for and what they found in Donald Trump, in a way, is someone who could speak to what they were feeling, gut, and say, follow me. And he said it in a way that people follow. They're finding out that the promises made are not going to be promises delivered. Prices haven't come down. right? Things aren't getting easier. It's not just the bad guys who are being rounded up. They're rounding up everybody who doesn't think like them, look like them, want to be with them. That should make us all scared. But we can fight it, we can flip it, we can turn it around, and we'll see as people have that voice. And I think if someone rises to the front and says, here's where I want to take this country, here's where I think we can go as a people, here's my plan to lay it out, we'll get there.
Okay, publish it.
Okay. I promise it will be published, it will be on our website, probably early fall. So, are you next question?
One more.
You can do two more, I'll give quick answers.
Thank you, Congressman, for having this town hall.
I
Question.
think you can take that now.
Take it out. I'd be better than leaning over and looking so. My question regards this, as you know, there's two terrible conflicts going on in the world right now, one in Ukraine and one in Gaza. The president, during his campaign, said he was going to end these immediately if elected. He even said he'd have the Ukraine war ended with a phone call before he was elected. None of this has occurred, of course, and recently he made some statements that are indicating he's not very interested in ending these conflicts, and actually made some reference to that, well, when two school kids fight, maybe let them fight for a while. But in this case, letting them fight for a while costs thousands of lives. And what I'm asking is, what can Congress do, and what is Congress doing to work to get the administration to work with our allies to end these terrible conflicts?
Thank you. I'm going to expand the question because it's more than two. We can talk about Sudan, we can talk about Congo. The world as countries in general, and one country in particular, pulls away from democracy and freedom, and conflicts rise around the world becomes an increasingly dangerous place. And so it's imperative that the president doesn't have the attention span. And again, I'm going to tell a story, you're laughing, but it's funny until you cry. You saw that Tulsi Gabbard is changing the president's daily briefing, which he's only read 14 times in the 100 and some odd, or more than that, days that he's been in office. They're going to turn it into a Fox News highlights. Yeah, that's the right. It's not laughing. It's like, come on. President is the most powerful person in the world, leads the most powerful country in the world, and has to know what's happening in the world to respond in a way. And the response isn't America first or America only. Our power and our success so much has been because we can convene others. You know, we just celebrated VE Day and landing on Normandy yesterday. The United States led, but we didn't fight and defeat Hitler alone. We had a lot of help. The world needed the U.S., but the U.S. needed the world as well. And so that brought overarching. I'm going to get specific too, and I'll talk Ukraine before Gaza. And I am going to wrap up on this just because I'm not giving a short answer. Let's be clear. Russia, Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine first when he invaded Crimea a decade ago, and then 3 years ago when he invaded all of Ukraine, seeking to basically conquer Ukraine with the ultimate goal of reestablishing the Russian Empire. We cannot let that happen. If Putin succeeds in Ukraine, if Ukraine fails, it's a threat not just to Europe, but to the whole world. Shortly after the beginning of the war in 2022, the invasion in 2022, I was at an event with the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States. It was a 1 week after the beginning. And she said, we won't give up without a fight. The 30 years of independence that Ukraine has experienced is the longest period of Ukraine's independence in more than 400 years. The young people who only know that independence are going to die fighting to protect that independence. And if you remember back at the beginning, we said, no way can Ukraine withstand this. Here we are, more than 3 years later, that continues. Part of that is because of, well, 99% of that is because of the spirit and the commitment of the Ukrainian people. But they can't do it alone, and they've gotten help from Europe and the United States. And the U.S. help has been vital, not just in the form of weapons and bringing people together, but in the form of intelligence, which is now no longer being delivered. You remember President Trump had Zelensky in his office, and they upbraided him. And think about this. As Trump is saying to Zelensky, you have no cards to play. And Zelensky was 16 months or 15 months into the 18-month plan of Operation Spider's Web. He must have been thinking, I got a few. And that attack the other day, first of all, changes the whole strategic concept of future wars. It will be studied and heralded forevermore. It affects us. We have to think our strategy, rethink our strategy as well. But it shows that the Ukrainians are in this war to protect their sovereignty. We have to stand with them, and we're going to. So, I'll use this as a bridge. What are we doing? I mentioned working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to communicate to the administration how important it is, to communicate to the public why we have to stand with Ukraine, and we will continue to do that. And the majority in our country, not a big enough majority, but the majority of Americans recognize that Ukraine's fight is in many ways reflective of American tradition, fighting for its independence, and Ukraine's interests affect America's interests, and we'll continue to hopefully support them in that respect. The war in Gaza is complicated. So the most recent, the next action I'm taking, I mentioned, next week I'm going to Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, and Israel, looking for ways to find a path forward. I chair the Abraham Accords Caucus as one of the founders. It's bipartisan, bicameral, so both Republicans and Democrats, representatives and senators, both sides of the Capitol, because we can't take our eyes off the prospect for peace. But there will never be peace as long as Hamas reigns over Gaza and threatens Israel, and as long as Israel and folks in the government like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, members of the cabinet, refuse to recognize the dignity and legitimacy of the Palestinian people. So that's forward. The most recent thing I did last month was sending a letter I think we ended up with 28 colleagues to President Trump saying, lean on Israel, we have to get aid into Gaza. What I'll say now, I said in October of 2023, the steps to get where we need to be have to include getting relief into Gaza for the people of Gaza, getting Hamas out of Gaza. That's step one. You then can start into the process of rebuilding. This is what I'll be talking about with the Arab people, the Arab leaders that I'm meeting with, is how do we rebuild and recover Gaza to ultimately get to the hope for renewal. And it's not just a renewal for the people of Gaza, a future that rather than building terror tunnels underground, we're building towers where people can live, work, and grow above ground. But that it's a better future for the entire region. That Israelis and Palestinians, and this is the whole concept of the Abraham Accords. Abraham Accords for the first time put in writing that both Israelis and Palestinians belong to the same land. And they have to find a way to live together in that land. And it's not just Israelis and Palestinians, but all the Arabs and the people, and that's Muslims, Christians, and Jews, Yazidis, and you can run down the whole list. We had a hearing this week on Syria. And I was doing some research on history, and I just wanted, the ethnic groups and the history of the ethnic groups. And in Syria, you've got Chaldeans and Arameans and Armenians, people who date their roots back thousands of years, right? Live in this region of the Middle East. We can't, in our history, we're talking about 249 years of our history. It's a blink of an eye in a region where the people have been living there. The first humanoid remains in Syria go back 800,000 years, according to the internet. We have to understand the history to see the possibilities for the future. And so if we're going to end conflicts, we have to keep that optimism. And that's true in the Middle East. It's also true in Europe. Understanding Europe is understanding history. Ukrainian history actually predates Russian history by a few hundred years. And it's true in Congo and Sudan and everywhere else. There's no such thing as Pax Americana. We can't dictate peace for the rest of the world. But by our values, our principles, and our strength is critical here, we can help bring the world together to try to promote peace, and that's what we have to do. So that seems like a good place to end and say thank you. I am so grateful for all of you that came out. Used to be we did these in an hour. There's so much going on. There's no way we can do an hour. And it is a gorgeous day. Please go enjoy the rest of the day. You could be doing anything anywhere other than being here. The fact that you chose to be here, I think, shows. I said earlier, right, the best district in the country. We have to keep working together, and we'll continue to have these conversations. Don't wait for a town hall. I know we didn't get to everyone's question. Reach out, call our office, go online. You can send a message. We're catching up. Normally, we would get 1,000 to 2,000 correspondence in a week. We were getting 10, 12,000. And we're slowly catching up, but I promise we'll get back to you. So thanks so very much.